What's up, guys? It's Rusty with TatLogic, and today we're going to talk a bit about photo editing. I have a few different examples of how to take pictures and the pros and cons of each that I want to get into. It's not necessarily going to be like a how to take pictures, it's more of just like these are different ways to take a picture, and here's how we can edit it. There's too much editing, and then there's not enough editing. We'll talk about that as well. A quick disclaimer, I am not a photographer at all, so take these with a grain of salt. This is basically just my experience over the years and what I've learned, and I thought it might be helpful to share with you guys. Alright, let's hop into Photoshop and get started. Alright, so I'm here in Photoshop, and I have a few different photos that I took of my arm. This tattoo is a couple years old. It's fully healed, so none of these are fresh shots. I have different examples here just to show how different a photo you can get using each one of these methods. So the first one on the left, I went outside in the shade. I didn't have any filter or anything, and this is just shot with my phone. And I'll zoom in here so you can see kind of how it turned out. It's not bad. We're getting a little bit dark here, which is cool, but it's a little bit washed out. I know that some professionals use this method because basically without direct sunlight, the only thing that's lighting the tattoo is the sky, so you get this really nice soft lighting. The other benefit is we get nice crisp detail because there's no lens or anything in the way of our camera lens. Like there's no filter in the way of the camera lens, and so you get nice crisp detail. I can get really close to this and you can even see like the hair and everything there. So that's a benefit of taking it outside. You get a nice detail, but you lose a little bit of the darkness because it gets a little washed out from the sky. So the next one I took was with something called a CPL lens, and I use CPL film as well. The film goes over the light and the lens goes on the camera. Once again, this is my iPhone. I just clip that little lens on, and you're good to go. The CPL is a polarizing lens, so basically what that means is it works in conjunction with the film that you put over your light in order to reduce the amount of reflection you get from the light. It kind of cancels it out. And you can see that we're getting really rich shadows here. It's very dark, and the colors are really, really vibrant. So this is kind of one of the more popular ways to photograph your work that people are doing in the industry right now. The other thing that's important is taking the picture in a dark room. So if you have other lights on, it's not going to work as well because those lights don't have the CPL film over them, and so they're going to be bouncing and reflecting off your surface, and they're going to kind of wash it out. So there was no post-editing done in this. It was all just the CPL in the dark room with a straight-on shot. So the next one is CPL film, but on a paper towel. So you can see that it has a different effect when you introduce lighter objects into the scene. Our shadows are not quite as light here, but the colors are still vibrant, and we're not getting a strong reflection from the light, which is important as well. Next is just straight up, just use my phone, didn't have any lens or filter or anything like that. And this is one thing I just really wanted to talk about is like you can see how washed out the tattoo is. And I can tell you, like it's on my arm, like it doesn't look like that. It's not washed out. It's not really just kind of light down here. It looks much closer to these over here where it's really dark and you have all that color. So I see a lot of artists that they're really put off by altering their photo in any way. I get it. It's kind of like a purist mentality. You don't want to feel like you're lying to people, but you also want to put your best foot forward. You know, you don't want to sell yourself short. If you did a great tattoo, you need to take a great picture of it to show everybody. And, you know, this tattoo's phenomenal, but if it's all washed out, people aren't going to get the whole story of the piece that you worked on. So don't sell yourself short. Try and set yourself up for success. Have good lighting. Do whatever you can do to make the picture the most representative of how it actually is in person. So the last one I actually took with like a real camera. I have a Canon EOS M50, and it's kind of like a basic camera. It's nothing like super fancy, but it takes good pictures. And I adjusted the settings the best I could. I had a light right there, and some like soft bounce back off of the door here. So it's actually not too bad as far as like the lighting goes. You can definitely take lighting much further than that, but you know, for the purposes of this video, it works just fine. But you can see that now we're getting this like real rich kind of dark background here. The shadows are nice and deep. The colors are all there as well. So it's probably just a tad too dark, but we're going to talk a little bit about editing, and I'll explain how to fix something like that. So with editing, we kind of skate this fine line between pushing the tattoo to an area where it's like, okay, well, that's not real. That's not possible. Stuff is glowing. You know, you've seen it online. But then there's too little. You know, if I were to just straight up post the unedited, like blown out one, I wouldn't be doing myself any favors. So obviously some level of editing is appropriate. Now, I like having all of these examples here just to show you that like none of these are edited, and there's a wide range of outcomes here. So we have fully blown out, washed out image to very saturated to high contrast, and I didn't do anything other than have different lighting in each setting and different equipment. That's the only change in between all of these photos. So, you know, I hear people say like, oh, it's cheating, it's this and that. It's like, it's not cheating. There's just different ways to take pictures, and some people understand how to take better ones. That's why their photos look better, and some people don't, and so on. So, and it's not to say that like necessarily one of these is better than the other, as I'll talk about with like the editing. You can even get this one looking better than it is, but you have to do more editing when you take a poor photo. Basically, what you would like to do, what you should do, is you want to take you want to make it so you have to do the least amount of editing possible. Take the best picture initially with the best lighting, all of the things going for you, and then if it needs just a little bit more, that's what the editing's for. The editing should not be carrying the majority of the weight for your final image. So let's just go over some basic editing here. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this one, the one I took outside. Open up my group here, and all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate it so I'm not working on the original, and let's just mess with this a bit. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you know that they have a lot of just straight up photo editing tools, and one of them that's really helpful is the levels. So I'm gonna hit Control L, and it's gonna bring up this little box for us, and that's gonna allow us to manipulate the shadows and highlights individually, and the halftones as well. So if I move this slider over here, you can see that it's getting darker and more saturated in some areas. So if I'm looking at the tattoo in reality and I'm looking at this picture, I'm like, okay, it's a little washed out, so I might bump up these shadows just a little bit. Not to the point where it's like not real, you know, like we want the shadows just to be a little bit closer to what they might actually be. We're gonna mess with these other ones too, just to see what's going on. And yeah, just bring this to the left a little bit. Doesn't need too much. It doesn't need to be lighter. I'll just show you what these do. So like if I slide this all the way, you can see like how it's getting like super blown out now. We don't really want that. So that looks pretty good. Let me click it off and on so you can see. So yeah, if you're comparing the original to our edited one, you can see that the colors are a little bit more rich compared to the original, and the shadows are a little bit darker compared to the original. And again, that's like not to say that the tattoo doesn't look like this. It does. It's you know, this is black that he tattooed with, and it's not, you can see that it's not just like straight up black. You know, if I were to paint on this with a brush, like that's black, and you can compare it. You know, that stands out. It's not all the way black. And so this is probably something you could share. Like this is something you could post. Now let me show you how to take it like beyond like like where it's not something that's believable. So I'm just gonna go kind of like crazy here. Okay, so this is what I would consider like maybe a little bit too much. Now, that's not to say you can't do like cool backgrounds and all this kind of stuff, like little effects and everything. If you're going for like that sort of aesthetic on your page or online or whatever, it's cool, but we also want to be honest, you know? And some of the changes that we made inside the tattoo kind of push it out of that boundary of like what's honest and what's not. So you can see that the like little lines in here, like they're basically like glowing. Now you can achieve like a glowing effect within a tattoo if you do your values and your colors properly, but the point I'm making is this is the unedited photo and this is the final. If you've added this glow afterwards, you're kind of lying. You know, you are lying. And there's a difference between bumping up the levels a little bit and adding like a bunch of nonsense. So just keep that in mind when you're working on these things and when you are trying to make them, you know, as good as you can. It is tempting to go in here and change all this stuff after the fact, but that really should be in the tattoo. And from what I've seen, a lot of the people who have taken really phenomenal photos of their work and their work just looks incredible online, I've seen a lot of those pieces in person and the pieces are incredible most of the time. Most of the time, what's going to carry the bulk of the weight is the tattoo itself. So if you've done a great tattoo, then it really shouldn't require too much editing afterwards. Like I said, you can add some stuff to like make your page unique, you know, and effects and everything, but it's also important to, you know, maybe have some in there that show what it looks like, just kind of, you know, with minimal changes made to it. The first one, all it really requires is just kind of some levels. So like the second one, let's duplicate it. It honestly is really, really close. I might not even change much of this. So this is one thing to keep in mind. So like this background here, this like really bright white framing on the door, I might want to get rid of that and just knock it back a little bit and just like paint over it with black or something. And I'm not doing anything to the tattoo. I'm just saying like, hey, like this door is getting a little bit, like the attention should be on the tattoo and this door is just competing for that. So I might just like knock that back or something. On my tattoos, a lot of times I just get rid of the background entirely because I think it's distracting. But the main focus is the tattoo, and I really don't think it needs to be changed much here. All right, so this next one, it's a little washed out. You know, this might even be just a tad too dark because there's like a shadow up here, but you know, it's nothing to be concerned about. It's not. It's not getting to that like super unrealistic, like totally blacked out point. So this one, like I said, it's a little washed out. That could be because of all the white in the scene. So I'll just go ahead and bring up the levels once again and just kind of tap that just a little bit. I just made just a real minor change. It'll come in, you know, just a minor change to make it look more true to what it actually is. Okay, so this one where there's no thought put in whatsoever to actually taking a good photo. It's just straight up. It's in the light, tons of reflections. If you have a photo like this and you want to make it a little bit better, you know, maybe you just didn't have like, oh, I forgot this and I don't have my light today or whatever, and this is what you're working with. The levels is really important, but there's also something called the curves tool. So I'll go ahead and make a new layer there and go up to image, and you'll go to adjustments, and you have all of these options here to be able to manipulate the image. And the one I'm talking about, you come in here to your adjustments and it's curves, but all of these here will affect your image, and I'll go and do a few of those. So let's go into the curves first and start messing around with things. Okay, so This functions similar to the layers, but I kind of like the way that it manipulates the image a little bit better. It gives you just a tad more control. And you'll have to play with this on your own to kind of figure out like intuitively like what it's doing to the image. But basically, I'm just trying to get things a little bit under control with the exposure, because right now it's a bit much. So see, I'm pushing it here, but now these reds are starting to be a little bit too red. It's starting to get a little bit unbelievable. So just dial it back just a little. All right, let's compare to the original. Okay, we're getting there, we're getting there. But I would say that up here is probably okay, but down here it's still looking like really blown out. So one thing we could do is we can select it with the lasso, and we're gonna feather the selection maybe like 30. And the reason we do that is we don't want a sharp edge showing where we're editing here. So let's make a new layer with that, and I'm going to control the levels on this and try and bring that just a little bit darker, and you can see that it's just darkening the area that I selected. The reds are starting to get a little too saturated for me, so I'll probably stop right there. Let's see if we can do the midtones here. Here, like it's starting to look too red, so I'm gonna erase the new layer that we made just in those like super red areas, and basically that just allows for like a little bit more contrast in that area. And this just goes to show like why you want to take a good picture, because you shouldn't have to do all this. Like you can save yourself so much hassle by just taking a good picture to begin with. But if you were to need to edit it, these are some things you can do. I'll hop back into the image adjustments area so you can see some of like what these other ones do. One I really like is the shadows and highlights adjustment. And so what that's going to do is it's going to brighten up all your shadows right away. If you don't want that, you can dial this back down to 0. And your highlights, it's going to be able to knock them down just a little bit. So you can see if I take this all the way up, it's everywhere there's a highlight, it's darkening it quite a bit. So I can take this down just a tad to try and get rid of some of those highlights, and you know, just use that sparingly, because it can get out of hand pretty quick. All right, some of the other ones here you can do like color balance, and this is gonna adjust the colors. So say you took a picture and your light is like really warm, so it's like an orange type of light. Well, you can cool off the entire image by just dialing back the blues just a little bit. So I'll do the extreme here, or you can make it like warmer, cooler, warmer. And so you can play with those to kind of get the color looking the way you want. And you know, again, we're tiptoeing that fine line. You should just be using these to compensate for the lighting in the room. Like I said, if it's too warm or too cool, then you would come in here and you can manipulate that. All right, so the last one here is the one I took with my camera, and you can shoot like regular JPEGs, or you can shoot in RAW, and that just gives you a little bit more photo editing capability when you bring it into Photoshop. I just did a JPEG for this one, but what's good about this is like it gives you a lot of wiggle room with editing it. This looks fine, but it might be a little too dark. So once again, I'm going to come up to my image and adjust it. Make sure I'm on the right layer here. I am not. All right, so yeah, I'm going to come up to image adjustments, and let's mess with the exposure in this one. So there's 3 different settings within exposure. I'm not going to dive into everything. I really like the gamma correction. I like the way that it edits the photo. So I'm just going to bump that up so we can see things a little bit more. And this is a case of like, you know, me just being honest, where it's like it looks a little too dark in that shadow. So I'm just going to bump it up a little bit so it looks more realistic to how it actually is. And yeah, so you can see the different options here and how they turn out in the end. Once again, the photos that we take of our work are almost as important as the work itself, because you know the way you're going to get new clients is they're going to see your work online or wherever, and they're going to be interested in it. So we really do want to put our best foot forward and have the best representation of our work possible out there. So that's why it's important to understand editing and not overdo it, and understand taking good pictures, and just setting yourself up for success. Alright, that should do it for the video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. And I'll probably do another video on like how to take a proper picture, where I'll dive into a little more of the technical aspects. But yeah, thanks for watching.